All right, let's dive into a wild story today. We're talking about how a simple trip to the mall to buy a pair of jeans somehow spiraled all the way up to the Supreme Court. Yeah, you heard that right. And it really makes you think, where exactly is the line between a store protecting its property and just flat out destroying a customer's reputation? So put yourself in this situation for a second. You buy something, you pay for it, you've got the receipt right there in your hand to prove it. But as you're walking out, an employee runs after you, accusing you of stealing. What do you even do? It sounds like a total nightmare, right? Well, for one woman, this wasn't a hypothetical. It was her reality. And it kicked off a legal fight that lasted for years. So our story kicks off back on July 25th, 2001. We've got a woman named Shirley Quiñones who works as a ticketing agent for an airline. She's just doing some shopping at a Guess boutique in a mall in Cebu City. You know, a totally normal, everyday kind of thing. But it was about to go sideways fast. Shirley finds a pair of black jeans she likes. The price? A little over 2,000 pesos. She goes to the counter, she pays, the cashier gives her an official receipt, and she walks out of the store. I mean, it's a transaction that happens thousands of times a day, every day, without anyone thinking twice.
But here's the turn. As she's walking through the mall, a Guess employee catches up to her and says she never paid for the jeans. Now, you can imagine, she's probably stunned. She tells them, "Of course I paid," and she shows them the receipt. But for some reason, that just wasn't enough.
Okay, so to get out of the crowded mall walkway, Shirley suggests they all head down to her office, which was conveniently located right there in the mall's basement. And it's in that office where this whole situation gets really messy, because we end up with two completely different versions of events. And here we go. According to Shirley, the store employees basically humiliated her right in front of her own clients. She said they kept demanding payment and even searched through her wallet. But if you ask the store, oh, no. They claimed they were gentle and polite the whole time. In fact, they said Shirley was the arrogant one who couldn't even remember who she paid. It's a classic he said, she said. Who do you even believe in a situation like that? So the confrontation in her office, it just ends. No real resolution. But the store and its employees, they weren't about to let it go. They decided to take another step, a huge step. And this next move would become the absolute heart of this entire legal case. They wrote a letter.
This is where it goes from a dispute to an attack. This letter, it wasn't sent to Shirley. It was sent directly to her boss, to her employer. And inside, it had this line right here, flat out accusing her of being a liar. I mean, just think about that for a second. They weren't just questioning a payment anymore. They were actively trying to damage her professional character.
And the letter didn't stop there. It tried to paint this picture of a guilty person, saying she had a blank expression and that she hurriedly left the store. The whole point was clearly to make her look bad to her employer and harm her reputation. Interestingly, her boss actually refused to even accept the letter, saying it was a personal matter. But the damage was done. The attempt was made. Well, as you can imagine, Shirley Quiñones felt her name and her reputation were being dragged through the mud. So she decided she wasn't going to take this lying down. She sued Guess for damages. And that kicked off this whole legal saga that would wind its way through 3 different levels of the court system. And this case was a real roller coaster. First up, the trial court actually sided with Guess. It said the employees were just acting in good faith to protect the store's property. But Shirley didn't give up. She appealed. And then, get this, the Court of Appeals completely flipped the script. They sided with her, saying that letter was definitely written in bad faith with the intent to humiliate. So Guess took it to the final level, the Supreme Court, which agreed with the Court of Appeals and made Shirley's win final. So, you might be asking, why did the higher court side with the customer? I mean, doesn't a store have a right to check if someone paid? And the answer is, yes, they do. But the whole case, the final verdict, it all came down to this really important legal idea called the abuse of right. Okay, so what does that actually mean? Well, in simple terms, it's the law saying, yes, you have rights, but you can't be a jerk about it. You can't use your rights in a way that's unjust or dishonest or is specifically designed just to hurt someone else.
Just because you can do something doesn't always mean you should.
And when the Supreme Court looked at what happened, they said it was a textbook example. Let's break it down. First, was there a legal right? Yep, the store had the right to verify a payment. Second, was that right exercised in bad faith? The court said, oh yeah, writing that nasty letter to her boss went way beyond a simple check. And third, was the only real reason to injure her? By sending it to her employer, the court said the intent was crystal clear, to damage her reputation. They had a right, and they totally abused it. In the end, the Supreme Court ordered Guess and its manager to pay Shirley 50,000 pesos for moral damages and another 20,000 for her lawyer's fees. And the court made a really important point here. This money wasn't to make her rich. It was to compensate her for the very real moral shock and social humiliation she went through because of that letter. It was a formal public recognition that what happened to her was wrong.
So this whole saga, which all started with one pair of jeans, leaves us with a much, much bigger question to chew on. In our own lives, in our own disagreements, how do we know when we're about to cross that line? The line between standing up for what's ours and just tearing someone else down. Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.